like a septic drain field.
Oh.
It's got graded gravel, but instead of waste, of course, it's got fresh, clean spring water that's coming from a spring that's just up the road. Comes through pipelines underneath each one of these 4 beaches, wells up oxygen-rich cold water through the gravels. These sockeye are placed in here. They'll stay here till late September, and then they'll start to spawn. So they'll start coloring up. The sockeye, typically they have red bodies and green heads, and so they'll ripen up. They'll start to disperse throughout the beach. They'll end up picking mates. The females will start digging redds or nests in the gravel with their tail. Then the male and the female will deposit their eggs in the gravel. The males will be right there to deposit their milk or sperm, and it fertilizes the eggs. Then the female will dig with their tail and cover that nest with gravel, and then they'll die. So they've done their duty, and they've deposited their fertilized eggs in the gravel. In the spring, the eggs will, during the winter time, the eggs will hatch. Alevins, which are the little yolk sac fry, will be in the gravel. They'll absorb that yolk sac. When they are now buttoned up fry, they'll emerge, swim up and emerge from the gravel. They will exit the beaches. We collect them in hoppers, which then get lifted up onto trucks, and the trucks will drive them up and put them up into Baker Lake. And then once they're released as unfed fry into Baker Lake, then they'll disperse throughout the reservoir and start feeding on zooplankton in the lake for a year or more before we'll find them at the floating surface collector. So that's this whole beach here is mitigation for the lost habitat that because of the reservoir drawdown that occurs with the dams. So this provides a safe environment for sockeye to lay their eggs and deposit their eggs, and we get 2.5 million fry from these beaches. We also, at this new hatchery here was built in 2010, and we have broodstock ponds, which mean that we put adults just like you see here. We put them in those ponds, and we'll hold them there till they'll ripen up. Then we have a bridge crowder on each one of them. Every week we'll crowd them up, climb in the pond, and dip net the fish and check them. We can tell if they're ripe by kind of squeezing their belly. If they're not ripe, their bellies will be kind of firm. If they're ripened up and the eggs are broken from the skein and they're ready to be collected, their stomachs will be distended and eggs will deposit from their belly, and we know that they're ready to be collected. So then we whack them over the head, kill them, and slit their bellies open, collect the eggs, squeeze out the milk from the males and fertilize them, and then take the eggs into the hatchery and stick the eggs into vertical stack incubators that has water flowing through them until they hatch, and we remove those trays and then pond them. So then we feed them for a week or more, and then we'll collect them in a truck and then haul them also up to the lake and release them. Yeah.
How do you select the fish for this environment?
What's beautiful about the spawning beaches is we just put the fish in there. They're generally, the population is about 50-50, male, female, and they will choose their own mates. So whatever genetic processes are going on to help with the genetic diversity, we don't pick their mates. The males will fight for dominance, The females will, of course, ones that I guess are the most preferred by the males, will be chosen, and the females will lay their eggs, and they'll do their thing.
But where do the adults come from that end up there?
So all the sockeye, these are sockeye that are in these beaches. These sockeye are collected at the upstream fish trap down in Concrete. So when we walked around in that upstream trap, they're coming from the Skagit River, from the ocean to the Skagit River, back to the Baker River, intending to come back to their natal stream, so the place that they came from originally. So these sockeye came from the Skagit River there at our trap. So we trucked them around from the trap and haul facility down there and back the truck up and release them into the spawning beach. Some go here, some go to the lake, and some go to our broodstock pond. So we spread them out to each of those locations depending on the time of the season, and getting a good distribution from the early part to the late part of the run.
Question: is there any type of monitoring that happens once you take them up to the lake, the smolt? I mean, as far as when they're in the lake before they get into the...
For fry that are produced here, they're small. They're about 2,500 to the pound, so they're really tiny. We don't mark them. You can do a dye mark, which we tested, but we don't do that. Some of the fish that we have at this hatchery we'll hold for a year, and we'll feed them at the hatchery. We got a bunch of raceways, and on a daily basis we feed them and take care of them. And some we release in the fall, and we cut their adipose fin, a small fin on the back, on the tail. Some will hold all the way through the winter and release them as smolts in the spring. So we'll hold them all through the year. So we have quite a few that we just produce and release as unfed fry, a large number that we feed for a very short time and release to the lake, and a much smaller number, about 20,000 pounds at the most, we will hold and rear and feed and release much later. So trying to kind of bring the population up and support it. Yeah.
What do you guys do with the fish after you kill them?
Once the fish the question was, what do we do with these fish when we're done with them? Fish that have spawned here and died, we pick them out daily, and those get released for nutrient enhancement in some of the streams. So all the energy that they had gathered out in the ocean, we release them to decompose in the tributary streams. Those nutrients, mostly phosphorus, nitrogen, all those nutrients are gathered out in the ocean. We bring it back to the Baker system. As they decompose, those nutrients now go back out into the reservoir, which the phytoplankton, or microscopic plants, use those nutrients to grow, which then get fed on by zooplankton, small animals in the lake. So that just kind of keeps that whole life cycle going and keeps that nutrient rich environment for the juvenile fish.
And you do that for the ones that you fertilize yourself too?
Yeah. If they have, something I will add is that there's a viral infection that is found in sockeye primarily. It's called IHN, infectious hematopoietic necrosis. Whether you care, I don't know. But anyway, this viral infection, if they do come down with it, they're fine. But the adults are carriers. If they do have it, then a buyer will come. Instead of us putting them back out in the reservoir, they have an agreement with the agencies for a buyer to come and take those fish, and they'll destroy them. because we don't want the virus to get passed back to the reservoir. That's what we do.
Can that virus be passed back down onto the...
Okay, so the question is, can the virus then pass on to the juvenile fish? The adults are carriers. If they die and we leave them in there, the virus doesn't last that long. But if you have hatched fry and they're exposed to that virus, they can potentially come down with it. So what we do is, as soon as they're done spawning, we pull those morts out. By December, we pull everything out, whether they're spawned or not, and destroy them. And that's before any of those eggs have a chance to hatch in the gravel. So we stop that transmission of the disease from the adults to the newly hatched fry. And it works really well. So we can walk then, we'll just take a second, we'll walk up in between the two ponds and you can see more sockeye broodstock. Those are fish that we will crowd up and we will spawn. So we'll take a look at that and we'll walk through the hatchery and then we'll be done.
So you're feeding these